Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mosiah chapter 7 through 10. I had every intention of going into scriptures and talking about some doctrine, and I started to think about how hard it is sometimes to understand Book of Mormon geography and timelines and different groups moving, especially in this section of the Book of Mormon, the Book of Mosiah. It can be very confusing, and so I thought, well, let me try to make that a little more easy to understand, and it ended up taking all my time. So from this first slide, you can see that I've gone all the way to the very beginning of the Book of Mormon. It's about 600 years before Christ will be born. Lehi is living in Jerusalem with his family, and he's told to leave Jerusalem, and he travels down to the borders of the Red Sea, which is about 200 miles away, which would take, if they're going at a pretty good pace, between 10 and 14 days to get there. They travel 3 days near the borders of the Red Sea, and then the Lord asks Lehi to send his boys back to get the plates, which they do, and they go back to the tent of their father by the Red Sea, and then they're asked to go again to Jerusalem, and they go back this time for Ishmael's family. So if you look at all the miles that these boys walked, you're looking at about 800 miles. And that's a lot. That's a lot to do. And you can see why that would have been a hard thing to accomplish. Ishmael's family is now with Lehi's family near the borders of the Red Sea, and then the scriptures say that they begin to journey in a south by southeast direction, stopping several times. They end up eventually getting to a place called Nahum. And this is where Ishmael dies. And at this point, they go east until they come to a place which they name Bountiful. It takes them 8 years to get there. Nephi builds the ship, and they sail to the promised land. When they get to the promised land, they pitch their tents, and Lehi dies. And it's not very many days afterwards that Nephi is warned to leave. So Nephi takes those that want to follow him, and he moves them to a new land, which they name after Nephi. So they call it the land of Nephi. It's been 30 years since they left Jerusalem. 10 years later, they've already experienced wars with the Lamanites. 55 years after they've left Jerusalem, Jacob takes over the plates. Nephi dies. And then Jacob gives the plates to Enos, but it does not tell us how many years has passed away. Enos gives the plates to Jerem. It does tell us that it's now been 179 years since they left Jerusalem. 200 years from the time they left Jerusalem, the Nephites and the Lamanites are scattering all over these lands. So the initial landing is where the Lamanites are, and they are just building and moving, and so are the Nephites up in the land of Nephi. So it's not just one city, 2 cities, it's multiple cities. Now the plates are handed down to multiple people. The first one after Jerem is Omni, and now it's been 238 years since they left Jerusalem. 276 years after they left Jerusalem, there's been seasons of war and of peace at 282 years. Ammoron has the plates at 320 years. The more wicked part of the Nephites are destroyed, and you can see the Lamanites are starting to take over those cities, and so the Nephites are constantly being harassed by the Lamanites and conquered by the Lamanites. We don't get any years for Chemish or Abinadom or Amaleki. During the time of Amaleki, Mosiah takes the righteous people out of the land of Nephi, and they depart. They move north towards Zarahemla. And when they get there, they discover that there's already a people there whose king is named Zarahemla. He finds out that they're descendants of Mulek who left Jerusalem 10 years after Lehi left. These people have a stone that they got from the sole survivor of the Jaredites, Coriantumr. They're excited that Mosiah is able to translate this stone. He translates it, and that's what is the Book of Ether. And we have the story of the descendants of Jared, or the Jaredites, which left the old world around 2200 BC. Soon after, Mosiah takes his people to Zarahemla and becomes king of both his people and the Mulekites. Zeniff is asked to return to the land of Nephi, so to go back where they came from. And this is where the Book of Mormon becomes very confusing, because there is several flashbacks, and so hopefully this will help you. Zeniff is asked to go back to the land of Nephi, which he does. So while he's going back there, we keep reading that Mosiah's son becomes the king, King Benjamin. During King Benjamin's rule as king, the Lamanites attack, and King Benjamin and his people are able to defeat the Lamanites and to maintain their land in Zarahemla. After King Benjamin, his son Mosiah becomes king. So this is Mosiah 2, if you will, the second Mosiah, and he reigns. And we finally get a year. It's now 476 years since they left Jerusalem. 3 years after Mosiah is made king, he asks Ammon to go down to the land of Lehi Nephi to see what happened to Zeniff. So all these years have passed. We don't know what's happened. Ammon goes down. They wander around for 40 days. They finally find a hill, which is by Shiloh, and they're captured by Limhi, who is not a Lamanite, but is a Nephite king. One thing that we want to look at here is that now it's not called just the land of Nephi, it's called the land of Lehi Nephi, which makes sense because as the Nephites have moved north, the Lamanites have taken over the lands that the Nephites have left. So after Ammon is captured by Limhi, Ammon tells Limhi that he's from Zarahemla, and Limhi is super excited because now they feel like they can escape from the Lamanites. So Limhi recounts his history to Ammon. And so we go back now to when Zeniff left, when King Mosiah the first was king. Zeniff goes down. We don't know what year this is, but Zeniff goes down to the land of Lehi Nephi. He makes a treaty with Laman, who is the king of the Lamanites. The king of the Lamanites likes the idea of the Nephites being able to produce and work hard, and then he has this plan to enslave them and steal their property and steal their production. There's 12 years of peace, and sure enough, the Lamanites attack. But Zeniff and his people are able to defeat the Lamanites. In fact, there's this huge casualties on the Lamanite side, which is over 3,000 Lamanites, and only about 300 Nephites perish. After that war, there's 22 years of peace. The Lamanites attack again. Zeniff defeats them again. And then Zeniff builds this tower so that he can overlook the lands of the Lamanites, and then he dies. After Zeniff dies, his son Noah becomes king. Again, we don't know what year it is. 2 years after King Noah is put in as king, Abinadi shows up and begins to preach against them. They try to kill Abinadi, and he escapes, only to return again and then to be killed later on. But Abinadi was able to preach in a way in which Alma, one of the priests of King Noah, is converted. And again, we don't know what year it is, but Alma gathers the believers and they go to the land of Mormon. That's where Alma baptizes them and they start their church. Noah finds out about it, sends his army to destroy or to capture the people of Alma, but Alma's people, being warned by the Lord, escape. and they go to the land of Helam, which is an 8-day journey from Mormon. After Alma escapes to Helam, Noah's army goes back to the land of Nephi just in time for the Lamanites to attack. Noah and his people flee from the Lamanites. The Lamanites overtake them, and Noah commands the men to leave the women and children and to protect him and to flee further into the wilderness. Most of the men refused to leave their wives and their children, and those that did follow Noah and left their wives and children end up coming to their senses and killing Noah when he insists that they stay to protect him. Noah's priests see this and they flee further into the wilderness. So when the Lamanites now capture the rest of King Noah's people, one of King Noah's sons, whose name is Limhi, becomes the king. Limhi and his people are captured by the Lamanites and they become enslaved by the Lamanites. The Lamanites basically leave them alone for 2 years, and during those 2 years, Limhi tries to find the land of Zarahemla to get help to rescue them from the Lamanites. He sends 43 men to find the land of Zarahemla. They do not find Zarahemla, but they find a different land, a land that used to be inhabited by the Jaredites. We don't know what year this is. They describe it as a land of bones, and they find 24 gold plates, which they bring back to Limhi. When the 43 men sent by Limhi return back to the land of Nephi, this is when Ammon, who was sent by King Mosiah II, shows up. Limhi captures Ammon and finds out that Ammon is from Zarahemla. And so he's excited because that's exactly what he wanted to try to find out, is if the Nephites in Zarahemla were still alive. Ammon helps Limhi and his people escape, and they make it back to Zarahemla. As they are escaping, the Lamanites give chase, and the people of Limhi lose the Lamanites. The Lamanites get lost in the wilderness. As the Lamanites are trying to find their way back to the land of Nephi, they get lost, and they just happen to stumble onto Alma's people. They just happen to stumble onto Alma's people, who have been in the land of Helam this whole time, and they ask Alma to show them how to get back to Nephi, which he does. They then enslave Alma and his people. They put one of the priests of King Noah, Amulon, in charge of Alma's people. He mistreats them, and the Lord delivers Alma's people back to Zarahemla. Now almost all the Nephites are back in Zarahemla, and it's about 478 years since they left Jerusalem. And that's everything in a nutshell.